this video, I hone in on 2D from the IGCSE English Language 0990 Paper 1. Rather than start with a full response, my aim this time is to improve your technique when it comes to analysing language in detail. In the first half, I give targeted exercises and examples aimed at helping you be far more specific and detailed when exploring language before moving to a full 2D later. It's going to be useful. Stay tuned. This is Schofield on Shakespeare.
In order to help you navigate between sections particularly useful or interesting to you, I've colour-coded headers as shown below. Yellow summarises what is required for 2D and gives the top 3 bands of the mark scheme. In grey, I introduce a very short extract from George Eliot's The Mill on the Floss and do some closely targeted work on how to analyse very specific phrases. Orange, I move to my first extract from Thomas Hardy's The Mayor of Casterbridge. Once again, rather than doing a full 2D question, the aim is to help you analyse specific phrases in as much precise detail as possible. Green contains a different extract from The Mayor of Casterbridge. In this section, we look at a pretty tricky example of imagery and once again aim to analyse this with precision and imaginative insight. Finally, in red, this is your chance to do something approaching a full 2D, although some help is given with suggested specific phrases to analyse, shown in red on screen. In the pink section, I explain the examiner's perspective and how they will be marking your response, before in black, showing you my own model answer. This is analysed within the final section of the video with the white header. Unlike in previous years, Text C will not necessarily be a 19th century text. When I queried this with CIE recently, they confirmed that they have no stipulation that texts come from a particular period, so it is possible that texts from the 19th century could be used. However, for the purposes of this video, I will use texts from the 19th century, as they are generally a little trickier. So, if a 19th century text does come up in the exam, you will be primed. In this question, you will be directed to 2 paragraphs and asked to analyse 3 examples of words and phrases from each paragraph. What is the effect of each word or phrase? What are the connotations of individual words? This year, you are told explicitly that your choices should include the use of imagery. So, isolate examples of similes, metaphors and personification. There will always be more to say about these language devices than just mere adjectives, for example. Here are the top 3 bands of the mark scheme. Let's just highlight a few points from the top bands. Your quotations need to be judiciously, wisely chosen. In other words, go for the quotations that are reasonably complex and interesting. If you just pick obvious quotations, then there won't be much to say beyond the basic. What are the associations of your selected words and phrases? Words have a literal meaning, but also associations. To give a silly example, the literal meaning of a teacher is someone who attempts to impart knowledge in a school. But what is the word teacher potentially associated with? This will vary according to context, but often teachers can be associated with being dull or unfashionable or boring. I think this section of the mark scheme is key. You must explore imagery within the passage, those similes, metaphors, or uses of personification. Moreover, as well as precise analysis, the examiner is looking for some imagination in your response. As long as you back up your views by close reference to the text, aim to write at least 2 to 3 sentences exploring the effect of any similes, metaphors or personification in the passage. So we need literal meaning and word associations. The question will be in the format shown in blue. However, you will be asked to pick 3 examples of words from 2 different paragraphs, whereas here I just want to focus on one example to help build up your technique and understanding of what is required for this question. Let's look particularly at how the writer uses language to portray Maggie's feelings in this extract. George Eliot writes, "Lucy," Maggie began again. "He struggled too. He wanted to be true to you. He will come back to you. Forgive him. He will be happy then." These words were wrung forth from Maggie's deepest soul with an effort like the convulsed clutch of a drowning man. Lucy trembled and was silent. There are some tricky words in this passage, as there will also be in the exam. As an aside, what are you doing to expand your vocabulary to ensure that you fully understand any complex words that come up? Are you making the effort to read in your spare time, irrespective of the extent to which you love reading? Are you regularly using a dictionary? Are you making sure that when you read a word you half know, you look it up in that dictionary and jot it down? Anyway, on screen you can see the definition of wring, which is to force by twisting or by pressure. What does this word imply about the willingness of Maggie to say these things to Lucy? Did these words come easily? Did they cause her some kind of pain? First written task now. How does Maggie feel about telling Lucy about the man's actions? Use the quotation underlined in red to write 3 to 5 sentences answering this question, which would of course potentially form part of a much longer 2D response. In this video, I will regularly ask you to complete some written tasks after pausing the video. The video will then automatically resume 5 seconds later. So off you go. Answer the question on screen and press pause now. Here's what I wrote. Think about how it compares to your version. It is clear that Maggie is extremely reluctant to tell Lucy about the man's actions. The narrator states that these words were wrung forth from Maggie's deepest soul. The past participle wrung emphasises that Maggie is forcing herself to reveal these things to Lucy, and even that these words are causing her twisting physical pain. This is a precise response and shows a technical command of language by identifying accurately wrung as a past participle. But does it need to be developed further to get the grade 9? Yes. Here's the development. Additionally, the fact that the words come from her deepest soul indicate that she is revealing extremely personal, private, guarded feelings. Let's now look at the second part of the same sentence. Again, some complex vocabulary. What exactly, not hazily, does convulsed mean? If you were working independently on a passage, I would hope you would take the initiative to look it up in a dictionary. On this occasion, I've done it for you. Convulse is to shake violently with sudden, uncontrolled movements. What does this suggest about Maggie's feelings as she makes the effort to reveal difficult truths to Lucy? What is it doing to her? Task 2 now. Using your precise understanding of convulse and the simile as a whole, write 3 to 5 sentences exploring what this simile reveals about Maggie's feelings. You should use the quotation underlined in red on screen. Press pause now. Here's my response. Eliot uses a simile to emphasise Maggie's feelings of desperation. She writes that she spoke with an effort like the convulsed clutch of a drowning man. This simile compares Maggie's efforts to speak with the violently shaking hand of someone drowning. This suggests that emotionally she feels extraordinarily precarious and almost struggling to survive. But in order to get a grade 9 for this question, one single sentence analysing language can often be insufficient. How could this response be developed? I develop my answer further by writing, the implication is clearly that she is in terrible emotional turmoil and that the effort of speaking may potentially have catastrophic consequences upon her future well-being. Just as someone drowning is likely to be irreparably changed following the ordeal, they will be either dead or have a clear sense of the vulnerability of their mortality, so Maggie is likely to be similarly scarred. Here's another extract, this time from Thomas Hardy's The Mayor of Casterbridge. Now, let's focus on how Hardy uses language to describe the natural landscape. Press pause to read it now. Let's hone in on one particularly interesting example of imagery. To watch the heavens, the sky hung with rosy cloud was like looking at some grand feat of stagery from a darkened auditorium. What does this suggest about the sky? What do we know about going to theatres and the separation between those in the audience and those on stage? What does this suggest about the writer's view of the sky? Task 3 on screen now. Off you go. Press pause. My answer. Hardy's simile emphasises the separation between the position of the humans and the cloudy sky. He writes that to look at the west heaven was like looking at some grand feat of stagery from a darkened auditorium. Just as members of an audience in a theatre can only look at and admire an impressive stage from a distance, so those watching the sky know that they can only spectate rather than be a part of its beauty. But of course development is required. I continue, this time picking up on another interesting word used within the quotation. The adjective darkened emphasises the difference in light between the sky and the location of the onlookers. The sky is much brighter and thus more beautiful and impressive. How did your answer compare? How could you have improved it, developed it, or phrase your points more precisely? It might be worth spending some time improving your response in the light of my model answer. If so, press pause now. Time for another extract from The Mayor of Casterbridge. Here we're looking at how Hardy uses language to describe the clocks. Read the passage, pressing pause now. Let's hone in on this simile. A row of tall varnished case clocks from the interior of a clockmaker's shop joined in one after another, like a row of actors delivering their final speeches before the fall of the curtain. Let's think about actors on stage delivering speeches at the end of the play. Do they normally speak at the same time? Interrupt each other? And what does this suggest about the timing of the clocks chiming? Task 4, off you go. Press pause. I wrote, Hardy's simile stresses the fact that different clocks are chiming rapidly in succession, but at different times from each other. He compares this to a row of actors delivering their final speeches before the fall of the curtain. In a play, actors generally speak lines in succession without overlap. This suggests that there is a clear, albeit brief, pause between each chime of the various clocks. And then I develop. Additionally, the reference to final speeches suggests that the clocks may be chiming to signal a change in events, similar to the change from a play to a post-play activity.
We're gonna get a great night tonight and celebrate. Oh, still with me. Well done, dear viewers and subscribers. It's now time to move from focused, targeted work on individual quotations to writing longer responses. We've done some Hardy, we've done some Eliot, time for some Dickens.
Read the extract below. Explore how the writer uses language to convey meaning and create effects. Choose 3 examples of words or phrases to support your answer. Remember that in the real exam you will need to choose 3 examples from 2 different paragraphs, so 6 overall. For this extract I would suggest honing in on Oliver's feelings and character. So read the passage on screen incredibly carefully and press pause now. When the examiner marks your response, he or she will have a list of suggested phrases which candidates may refer to. Now, These are only a guide, but I always think that there are certain phrases in a passage which all candidates hoping to get a 9 will refer to. For instance, if you see a simile or metaphor or example of personification, you must quote it and explore its effects. Don't duck out of exploring more complex words. This will help differentiate you from more mediocre candidates. Now, quoting 3 of the underlined phrases, have a go at completing something approaching a full question 2D. I would allow yourself up to 20 minutes to write your response. Press pause now. So the examiner will have this grid to refer to when marking your response on a best fit basis. Overall, does your response show a basic or very general understanding of words and phrasing? In which case, it's a satisfactory band 3. Or have you given some careful explanation of words and phrases? If so, it's a band 4. Or is your analysis insightful, precise and imaginative, in which case it'll be a band 5. Examiners are given these notes to help them make their judgments. Notice that they're looking to reward candidates who select powerful or unusual words, so not just the obvious ones, as I've already emphasised. They're also looking to reward those that don't just explore the literal meaning of a word or phrase, but also the connotations and associations. Thank goodness that it isn't a tick box system as such, so it's always the quality of the analysis that they're looking at. But of course you do need to reference sufficient points, and here they state very specifically 3 from this paragraph, 3 from another, so a total of 6, and you need to show that your insight is therefore wide-ranging. The examiner's guidance then introduces a list of quotations with suggested analysis. You already have these words and phrases as I underlined them in red in the passage. Let's have a look at the mark scheme suggestions for these words and phrases. Read these through carefully now, pressing pause. Continue reading, pressing pause now. Now's the time to give yourself a very approximate mark out of 15 for your response. Spend some time thinking about this, toggling back to the comments in the mark scheme if you find that helpful. Press pause now. I wrote, Oliver clearly feels frightened in the undertaker's shop, as shown by the adverb timidly used to describe the way he looks around. He has a feeling of both awe and dread, which suggests not only that he has a kind of horrible respect for his surroundings, but that he is extremely worried. After looking at an unfinished coffin, a cold tremble came over him. He is so frightened that he physically shakes and senses that his body temperature has dropped due to his terror. Oliver is so frightened by the unfinished coffin in particular that his mind conjures up disturbing supernatural images. Dickens reveals that he almost expected to see some frightful form slowly rear its head from the coffin. This implies that Oliver has a vivid imagination and retains a childish possible belief in either the supernatural or humans returning to life from death. Certainly, he feels extremely uncomfortable and ill at ease in this undertaker's shop, and he can't help speculating about terrifying, unexpected movements. His extreme fear is such that he could be left unhinged mentally, as shown in the phrase driven mad with terror. Oliver is in such a fraught state of mind that the entire room seems to be full of terrifying supernatural possibilities. Some elm boards seemed like high-shouldered ghosts with their hands in their breeches pockets. The simile shows Oliver imagining the wooden boards, used presumably to build the coffins, as terrifying phantoms. Indeed, you could argue that his fear results in him failing to discern the tangibility of the wood and is distorting his perceptions about what is clearly a substantial object. Now for another bonus paragraph, although of course I only asked you to write about 3 quotations. Finally, the writer suggests that the small space beneath the counter looked like a grave. This simile builds on previous imagery about death and the supernatural, and suggests that this area is dark and very plain, devoid of any brightening human comforts. It suggests that Oliver is unable to disassociate himself from a frightening feeling of being very close to death. His mattress is in this area, and so presumably he will be sleeping and resting there. However, the simile implies that he would not be able to recuperate while sleeping, and instead will be haunted by gnawing fears about death and the supernatural. Let's just take one of the paragraphs and look at how it meets the criteria for the top band. Well, note that the first sentence immediately answers the question. There's no waffle or meaningless phrases such as "the writer uses language to achieve numerous effects in this passage." Next is the quotation of a powerful, interesting phrase. Indeed, it is a simile, and so will be directing the examiner to the specific points about imagery in the mark scheme. Note also how I have embedded the quotation so that it flows within the sentence. I guess you don't get specific marks for this, but it does help your writing flow so much better and does suggest something about your ability as an English pupil. And here I analyse the simile with precision before developing my analysis imaginatively.
So, how do you achieve a grade 9 in the 2D question of the CIE IGCSE English Language 0990 Paper 1 exam? Well, I think you do so by precisely answering the question using short quotations of powerful, interesting, occasionally tricky words and phrases, and then you make a point of analysing these words and phrases in plenty of detail, using connectives such as additionally, furthermore, and moreover, which force you to develop. Good luck to all of you, dear viewers. This has been a Schofield on Shakespeare production. Many thanks for watching.